Good morning, Trumptopia. A special segment of the Almost Daily Zencast, hosted by your favorite robot from the future, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. Today's episode, Tyranny in the Time of Coronavirus. Just when we thought it couldn't get any weirder, good old Donnie flip-flops on masks and actually wears one, calls it patriotic, and acts like he hasn't been totally bullshitting about how much he hates masks for the last 4.5 months. And also, seemingly without consequence, test drives Tyranny in Portland. Hello and namaste, friends and listeners. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. I am your humble, authentic, totally unscripted, and radically not paid by anybody host, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. Not a day goes by that I don't get accused of being something that I'm not. This morning, I've already been insinuated of being a paid troll. And that's not the first time. But once again, I assure you, dear listeners and friends on social media, no one is paying me to say or post what I post. And everything I share is genuinely, authentically my humble opinion. And I am an open-minded, critical thinker willing to update my concepts of reality when information adequately convinces me to do so. Having said all that, let me cut right to the chase for anybody new who's wondering, what the fuck does this guy got to say? When it comes to this thing we call Corona, the COVID-19, setting aside all conspiracy theory and all argumentation, I'm fairly certain, while I reserve the right to acknowledge that I could be wrong, I'm fairly certain that whatever it is, it's a real thing. Because Mother Nature is one gnarly bitch. Think about it. She came up with and created the great white shark, which will eat the fuck out of you without thinking twice if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. She created all the scary monsters out there that we've butchered or subdued. And every virulent disease or pestilence that has ever threatened our lives. To underestimate her ability and her powers to destroy us is to choose the height of naivete and willful ignorance. Okay, so having established that particular aspect of my worldview, I am fully aware that there is psychological manipulation content going on around and about this disease. For those of you who are not new to the show, you might be getting a little tired of me repeating myself. But it has to be said often and loud for those in the back who are not listening and for those who are new and are just tuning into this episode for the very first time. Something is killing people. And yes, other things kill more people. But the scary part is this thing is new and we don't know how hardcore it can get. That's why we take reasonable risk reduction measures. Now, I wanted to take a moment to revisit the numbers because I haven't done that on the show in a while. And I get it. No one needs to explain to me for the 1100th time that there's obvious signs of corruption and or incompetence in the testing. There has been from day one. Okay, I'm well aware. But let me clarify for you listening, for everybody listening, right here and right now, where my position is on that. Of course there's corruption, right? There's corruption in most things. But this disease is acting like in a very organic way. In other words, it's not acting or behaving like nanobot technology that's distributed by or broadcast by 5G towers. It's behaving like infectious disease, like a virus that is highly transmissible and has new and bizarre methodologies of propagating itself. Having said that, it is my personal conclusion that while the numbers could be argued about, and that yes, there have been false positives, and yes, there have been false negatives, and just about everything in between, odds are, given that testing has been riddled with incompetence and a failure to be done at a large enough scale to truly be effective and useful, the simple fact of the matter is when it comes to cases, the numbers are probably too low. Despite all the conspiracy theory claims that it's being overblown, the truth of the matter is it's probably not accurate by, being too short. Is the fear-mongering heavy-handed? Of course it is. You don't need to tell me about fear-mongering. I've been warning people about the fear-mongering for 30 years. Just take a moment to scroll through my Facebook. Use the searchy thing and go back 10 years. Go back, 10 years and I'm probably still just a theater nerd that's too shy to post this stuff on Facebook. But I've been talking about this publicly in my real life since I was a kid. Because since way back in the day when Ronald Reagan was in office and I first encountered conspiracy theory on the internet, and yes, there was internet way back in the day when I was a kid. I had internet on an Apple IIG, or was it a 2GS? I can't remember what the name of the provider was, but there was internet. And you could find random crazy corners of the internet where conspiracy theory was running amok. I digress. I've already talked about that. So yes, of course, these numbers are probably skewy and not super accurate, especially if there is a lot of corruption or incompetence. Are they 100% false? Probably not. When I review the numbers, I generally worry that the numbers are actually bigger than they are. The only numbers that I probably figure might need a downward adjustment are the death toll numbers, because there have been some clear incidents of, there's reports that someone died in a car crash, and that's what killed them. But because they had COVID, or because they tested positive for COVID, and the morgue, I suppose, they got listed as a COVID death. And for sure, that's probably inflating the numbers a bit. But conversely, here's a fun thing that's potentially a fact. Testing in the United States, this is applicable only in the United States. In the United States, since the initiation of a testing regime, testing has increased by about 30%. The caseloads in hospitals has increased by, I think, 149%, some number like that. Hold on, I have it written down somewhere. And of course, being the totally unscripted and often underprepared show host that I am, I don't have it in front of me. Here it is. Testing has gone up 30%, but the caseload is up 194%. So that indicates to me, if that's even remotely accurate, let's give both of those numbers an error range of 10%, just because it's likely. But that's still, given each of them potentially being a 10% margin of error, that still indicates that there's more community spread, which makes me think of that Philadelphia cream cheese commercial. But there's more infection going on than the testing has the statistical capacity to identify. And so we're getting cases in hospitals which are sort of retroactively tested, where in other words, the testing is lagging the infection rate. And the testing should be ahead of the infection rate. Another indicator is that, generally speaking, the positivity rate has been really quite weirdly escalating. Now, we can argue all we want, but let's just take a look at the numbers and presume a margin of error and a margin of corruption, but just take it for what it is. For those who are curious, when I reference these numbers, I'm looking at worldometers.info, and to the best of my ability to discern, they are a non-political, non-partisan, unbiased, independent website that is tracking the data coming from hospitals such as Johns Hopkins, etc. And they're coalescing that data to generate their numbers. Coalescing? I don't think that was the right word. Collating. That might not be the right word either. But I digress. Setting aside all the arguments that these numbers are totally fake, which I don't think they are, I think that there's a margin of error for corruption and incompetence, but that they represent, to some degree or another, the overall caseload and the day-to-day caseload, etc. Looking at the international listing, USA is number 1 with a total caseload of 3,961,429 since the beginning of the epidemic or pandemic, whichever one you like better, with a total daily new case number for just yesterday of 62,879. The total death, according to this site, for the United States is 143,834, with 545 new deaths as of yesterday. The next several countries ranked below the United States: India, with 1,154,917 total cases. Brazil. Oh, I didn't sort it by that. I sorted by new cases of the day. So let's sort by total cases. By total cases, it goes USA with over 3 million, almost 4 million. Number 2, Brazil with 2.1 million. I'm just going to round to the nearest million, or fraction of a million. India with 1.1 million. Russia with 770,000. South Africa with 373,000, Peru with 357, Mexico with 344, Chile 333, Spain 313, the UK, Iran, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Italy with 244, Turkey with 220,000, Bangladesh 207, Colombia, Germany, France at 176, and it keeps dropping from there. So, setting aside the argument about whether or not these numbers are fake, and setting aside the argument about whether or not the disease is a complete and total lie, it's a fascinating thing that the two countries, US and Brazil, America and Brazil, are the two countries where COVID denial is most trendy. The two countries with presidents that have called the virus a hoax are the two countries with the most total cases, the highest daily numbers, and, if I'm not mistaken, let me sort the total deaths are, total deaths, here we go. The total deaths, still US and Brazil. When you rank that column and sort it, USA's got a grand total of 143,834. Brazil's got 80,251. And they're quickly catching up because they have more daily deaths than the United States. As of yesterday, according to this site, 718 COVID-19 related deaths. Let's take a look at the numbers for the United States, broken up by state. Ranked according to total cases, the top 4 are New York, California, Florida, and Texas. But let's take a look at the numbers according to total new cases. Right now, according to new daily cases, as yesterday's cases were tallied, it's Florida in the lead with 10,347. California close behind with 8,814. Texas is in third place with 7,925. Louisiana with just over 3,000. Georgia with 2,452. Alabama 1,880. Tennessee 1,639. Arizona 1,559. North Carolina 1,478. South Carolina, 1,459. Mississippi, 1,251. Ohio, 1,230. Let's take a look with total deaths. Total deaths. Or should we, no, let's look at new deaths for right now. Not as big as the fear-mongering would have some people believing. Yesterday's daily death toll number is Texas, number 1, with 118 people dead. Florida, 90. California, 56. Louisiana, 31. New Jersey, 23. Arizona, 23. New York, 14. Ohio, 14. North Carolina, 13. Nebraska, 12. Connecticut, 10. Washington, 10. And it goes on from there. Well, those don't sound all that horrible. Of course, it's easy to minimize, especially if you have no direct involvement in any of the deaths. But take a moment and use your capacity for compassion and empathy and put yourself in the shoes of people who are misfortunate enough to have lost 1 or 2 or 3 people in those numbers. So these numbers, I'm not pretending to accept these numbers as absolute truth. I use it as a sort of guide, right? To get a sense of overall what's going on. Presuming that the true numbers are very likely to be higher when it comes to cases. The death numbers, I'm not so sure where that margin of error falls, but the total and new case numbers, I'm pretty confident are actually higher than those being reported. And that includes whatever shenanigans is being exposed, right? There's people reposting variations on the theme of false positives are coming back. And some of these people are convinced that it's 100% false positives. That somehow somebody has proven that because a watermelon came back positive, then every single case is a false positive. Now, that would be a scary thing if it were true, right? But it's categorically not true because I personally know people who've gotten back negative test results. So that claim that 100% of the tests are false positives can't be true because people get negatives. The reality is that there's probably the full spectrum of outcomes, true positives and true negatives, and a margin of error of false positives and false negatives. Because that's how shit goes, people. And while there might be some fudging of numbers or some shenanigans going on with the reporting, real people are actually dying. I know that because I know real human beings that I trust that have lost family members. and that there was no reason those people should have died, right? So, where are we going with this? I think my new favorite meme of this COVID-19 era I'm jealous because it just puts it in perfect perspective. I just found this meme sometime in the middle of the night last night. First time I've seen it. I was up with a bout of insomnia. So scrolling around and, posting my opinion on people and being called names for it. Like I do when I have insomnia. But this meme showed up and I had to snag it and I'm going to post it soon. But it says, how my Facebook feed looks right now. And below the caption, there is a picture or a painting clearly depicting the British Army and the American Revolutionary Army, like, facing each other off. Not in battle, but, like, standing there as if they were in parley or about to, or just yelling at each other. And there's little, speech bubbles. And on the left, which is curious, they should have flipped the image around. But on the left, so that, the left-right paradigm would also line up. But on the left, there is the British Army, and in its little speech bubble, it reads, "Put on your masks, you selfish, unscientific twats." And on the right, oh no, it does line up. On the people on the left are generally the ones saying, that are pro-maskers. On the right, it says, "Fuck you and your pedo masters bullshit propaganda." And holy fuck, if that isn't exactly what's going on. If I were to have made this meme, I would have tried to Photoshop myself into the gap between the two of them and given myself a speech bubble saying, both sides are being manipulated. Because that's where we're at, folks. That's my ultimate, big picture thing, and why everyone on both sides assumes and projects all kinds of garbage on me and doesn't really want to listen to what I've got to say, because nobody wants to acknowledge that they have been targeted by and manipulated by PSYOP content. How do I know that no one wants to admit? Because I've gone through that process of having to cope with the fact that, oh shit, I fell for that. What the fuck was that? Oh, that's what it's like to fall for PSYOP. Okay. I've gone through that in my life. It just happened a long time ago. And since then, I've tried really, 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 really hard to learn how to discern the difference between truly alarming data or information and manipulative content. Am I perfect at it? Probably not. But do I stick to my guns and encourage others to exercise their critical thinking skills to try and avoid falling for manipulative PSYOP content regardless of what demographic they self-identify as? Yes. Because if you're busy judging others, spewing insults, and mocking, ridiculing, and belittling others for not agreeing with you, then you are drinking the Kool-Aid. That's what the Kool-Aid is, friends. The Kool-Aid turns you into a self-righteous, ego-driven, ideological fighter that's going to fight for whatever ideology conned you into drinking the Kool-Aid so that you can keep drinking the Kool-Aid. Something I was jotting down earlier today comes to mind right now. So, in the realm of public discourse, a lot of people get caught up in absolutist thinking. and make broad stroke, super generalized statements like all Republicans are right-wing racist extremists. That is, of course, incorrect. I personally know some Republicans that are not that. I also know some Republicans that totally are. What is correct is that the system of oppression tries to hijack and corrupt everyone. All Democrats are left-wing socialist extremists. Incorrect, my friends. You know what is correct? The system of oppression tries to hijack and corrupt everyone. All journalists are liars. Meh. Sorry, incorrect. You know what is true? The system of oppression tries to hijack and corrupt everyone. And I went on and I wrote several examples of the kind of absolutist blame game thinking that does mostly one thing. It gets people to be blindly outraged at whatever group they have absolutely judged in its totality as some sort of monolithic evil. You know, like when people say all Mexicans are rapists and job-stealing drug dealers. That is false. As a natural-born Mexican, not native-born Mexican, well, natural-born too, but as I'm a robot from the future, but that's a whole other story. Put a pin in that. I talk about it in other episodes. I'm not really a robot from the future, guys. I'm not crazy. I just like saying that because people say the darndest thing, and that's one of my favorite things is to be from that strange of a faraway place. But as a Mexican, I can assure you, it is impossible that 100% of all Mexicans are job-stealing, drug-dealing rapists. But you know what is true? The system of oppression tries to hijack and corrupt everyone. I can go on and on and on. Insert your favorite scapegoat group of people, and the idea that all of them are insert your favorite variables of evil. If you're spewing that kind of nonsense, you are hooked on the Kool-Aid. It is naive to believe or presume or assume that your preferred beloved group that you identify with is the only righteous group on the planet. That is never true. Because that's absolutist monolithic thinking, right? Just like no group of people is absolutely monolithically evil, no group of human beings is absolutely monolithically good or righteous. But so many people fall into that ego trap and then center their entire universe and their entire mode of thinking and all of their arguments around that false assumption. That's what the system of oppression is really good at, is getting you to judge others. That's their goal. And they capitalize on natural emergencies all the time. Whenever there is a natural disaster, you will see in the fringes of the public discourse a conspiracy theory about that public disaster. I mean, there's literally people out there who think that earthquakes are fake and caused by evil lizard overlords that live underground or by technology that's... although, ironically, the fakest earthquakes, well, they're not fake because they're actually shaking the ground, right? The ground is shaking, so that's an earthquake. But the most artificial earthquakes are the ones caused by hydraulic fracturing. Those cause earthquakes in places that otherwise would not be having earthquakes. And that's the closest thing you've got to fake earthquakes. But people think the damnedest things. And it's mind-blowing how much they want to believe in a complicated, convoluted, self-aggrandizing conspiracy theory that ignores nature, distances us from our spiritual calling, convinces you to blame others for all the world's problems, seduces you into hate-mongering against those others that are causing all the problems, and keeps you outraged instead of unifying with your brothers and sisters to solve the problems. As I was talking about recently, the conspiracy theory community has been around for 50 some odd years. I'm sure it's on its way to being 60 years old or more. And has it solved anything? No. But conspiracy theory community members spend a lot of time patting themselves on the back for exposing the elite. And yet the elite remains and continues to do what it does. And after 30 years of observing conspiracy theory content and the way in which it impacts the conspiracy theory community itself, I am convinced that the true source and origin of conspiracy theory content is, in fact, the very elite conspiracy that the content claims to be exposing. And instead of exposing them, it's keeping people on a treadmill of chasing down red herrings and disinformation and spreading this misinformation and fear-mongering and hate speech and failing to unite to solve the problems. What do we do to solve the problems? What do we do to solve the problems is the question very few people are actually asking. And when they do ask it, too many people jump straight to bloody violent revolution with guillotines. Did that really solve anything when we killed all the bad guys? Or did that just turn some of us into bad guys? I'm not into ideology, right? If you haven't caught on yet. Because people presume and project whatever favorite other they like to be against and project it onto me, right? Left-leaning Democrats almost always assume when I contradict them or don't agree with them on something and share with them why I don't agree with them, they presume I'm some sort of Trump loyalist. I'm like, well, you aren't paying attention if you think I'm a Trump-topian, because I'm not. And conversely, right? Trump lovers think I'm some kind of Hillary Clinton fanatic. Never liked her at all. Would I have preferred to have endured whatever clusterfuck of crazy would have happened if she had been president? Yeah, actually. Because Trump is parabolically the most extreme we've ever taken anything with a puppet in the White House. Back in the day, by the way, for the record, for anybody who's new, back in the day when Trump first rode down that escalator in front of paid extras pretending to be enthusiastic fans, my opinion was that he was the controlled opposition to Hillary Clinton, and that the incredibly off chance that he was going to win, that we would go through a psychological manipulation or psyop campaign for 4 years to see how extreme of a right-wing nutjob the United States was tolerate. And lo and behold, look where we are. As the coronavirus continues to do whatever the fuck the coronavirus continues to do, and the American government continues to handle the situation with mostly incompetence and a big dash of corruption, Trump has proven himself to be as bizarrely interested in tyrannical tactics as the most anti-Trumpers feared back in the day, right? And I didn't jump on that bandwagon. In the early days when it became clear that he was a contender, and I was paying attention to his rhetoric as we approached the election, I was like, wow, there is some of that is a bit, like tyrannical leaning or tyranny adjacent. Just like he gets away with appearing to not be racist, but is right there on that adjacent level of sort of like, come on, dude, you're almost a racist for saying that kind of shit. He's just revealed himself to have been very clever and very coy about everything, in my opinion. He's proven himself to not actually give a fuck about anybody. That's for sure. And has now taken the most extreme steps of test driving federal government overreach tyranny in a way that makes all the accusations of Trump being a tyrant seem ridiculous. Not Trump, Obama, right? But now here's the interesting pattern. And I think I've talked about this recently. Forgive me, guys, if I'm being really redundant. I've been dealing with a lot of insomnia lately, so I'll hit record on a new episode, and I don't know what I talked about last time. But take a note. Take a notice of this. Go back through history. Every president since Ronald Reagan has been accused by the other side of overreach of power and being, borderline tyrannical. It's been a constant theme. What the fuck is that about? And then whenever it flips, when the opposition gets control, the base for that guy that was busy calling the last guy a tyrant doesn't seem to realize that their guy is doing equivalent things. And the other guys are crazy cuckoo nut jobs for calling their, guy a tyrant. People who hated Bush Jr. talked about what a tyrannical, crazy government overreach guy he was. People who hated Obama called him a tyrant. People who hated Trump call him a tyrant. The irony is that since I've been observing American politics, which began back when Ronald Reagan was in office, every president has done controversial things that the American public should have been able to agree, transcending political party nonsense, that they don't approve of. But miraculously, they somehow get away with it. Every president in my observational period here has done some absurd or obscene shit. From the Iran-Contra scandal to, there's too many things to list with Trump, but what was a bunch of, Obama dropped more bombs than anybody before him. Trump is on trajectory to drop more bombs than Obama. And that alone right there. The fact that no matter what surface distractions they love to play with, ultimately, every president perpetuates the infinite, endless warfare that the system of oppression profiteers on, should be radically clear to people by now. And it really shocks and amazes me sometimes how hardcore the blinders people put on really are, that they just don't want to see it. The left doesn't want to see that their own candidates and presidents have been just as guilty of facilitating the perpetual war profiteering as the opposition has. The Trump base is convinced that Trump is going to end all wars. But they also are foaming at the mouth for a civil war. I just don't get it, right? And the irony of all of it to me is that it's something that can be resolved if we as a species collectively make the issue to abdicate all ideological constructs. Now that sounds crazy radical, right? That's like beyond anarchy. Anarchy, whatever you want to say about anarchy, it's still an ideological construct, right? It has its tenets, it has its boundaries, it has its rules and regulations, it has its conditioning. All ideology is a form of mental conditioning. All mental conditioning can be partially useful, but ultimately gets turned into a form of mental slavery. Why? Because the system of oppression tries to hijack and corrupt everyone. And if you're patting yourself on the back for being woke and better than everybody else and being aware that everybody else is being manipulated but thinking that you haven't been, then, bro, they got you by the nose. Because that's what they want you to think. Because if you got someone to piss in the face of, you won't notice them profiteering on you and manipulating you into further conflict. So what do? Well, first things first. We got to get a handle on this coronavirus before it mutates again and gets crazy worse. But more importantly, in order to achieve that, we need to stop talking past each other. We need to stop buying into psychologically manipulative content that pits us against one another. And that's got to happen on all sides of the issue. We can't demand that only the anti-maskers give up their conditioning. Everyone has to set down their crazy ideas. Because if you don't set down your ideology, your belief systems, all the blinders that you've got on, how on earth can you see anything clearly? And trust me, friends, that's what the system's all about. The system of oppression gets accused of a lot of things. And the system of oppression does a lot of nasty things. But at the core of its movement, the thing that I've noticed is that it wants to keep you from achieving your spiritual progress. It's gone to great lengths to get a lot of people to dismiss the very idea that there is spiritual work to be done. I mean, it's really easy to prevent a species from evolving spiritually and energetically if you've convinced that species that they do not have a soul, or that they do not have a spiritual calling, or that they do not have spiritual work that is required to be done in order to evolve, right? And as soon as you get them to think that that's crazy new age woo-woo nutjob stuff, then you can manipulate them into all kinds of other crazy nonsense, like supporting police brutality, or tolerating institutionalized racism, or hating their own brothers and sisters in humanity over ideas that are not worth hating each other about. There's a lot we can unpack and discuss about where things are, but here I want to end today's episode with this. My concern is that it appears to be that the conspiracy theory, psychological manipulation content is working marvelously, because we got this argument going on between those who accept the science and those who reject the science, those who want to take risk mitigation measures and those who want to revel in their freedoms. Oh, there was another great meme I saw earlier, and it was like a widowed woman. It was like from the 1800s, and they're in a couple's bedroom, and there's a widowed woman at the window looking sad and looking out the window. There's a dead husband in the bed, and there's a doctor in one of those creepy doctor outfits with the long beaked mask and the gloves and the trench coat. And the doctor's got, a gloved hand tenderly on the woman's shoulder. And the woman is saying it was his freedom to lick rats. That one made me giggle this morning. Tune in for an episode where I do a dive into what freedom is and how it works. That's something I've been trying to circle my way back around to again. Because freedom isn't what they build, what it's billed as in America, right? Like, land of the free. Who's free? You're either in debt or you're oppressed by the system because of your skin color, or you're enslaved by the profiteering system that has given you the money that you cherish so much. Because even rich people are enslaved, yo. But I digress. Freedom doesn't work the way we've been tricked into thinking that it works, and we'll talk about that more in a future episode. So, for right now, I've rambled long enough. It's been 45 minutes. I wanted just to put that all out there really clearly, because I realize more and more new listeners are coming to the show. So if you're new to the show, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for hearing me out on a set of assertions. If you agree, great. If you disagree, fine. But take a moment to think about what I've said. Take a moment to really look around. Don't believe me on blind faith, right? I never want that. That's exactly the opposite of what I'm trying to achieve. Something I posted years ago that came up recently in memories is I'm not here to make anybody believe me. I'm here to rattle the cage of belief in order to facilitate the human species into realizing that we use our belief systems. We allow our own belief systems to become our own gilded cage in our mind. True freedom has more to do with the clarity of mind that you have to perceive and comprehend what's going on than it does with your ability to go and do whatever the fuck you please. So I'll close on this. This is one of those bitter, hard pills to swallow. A lot of people out there have confused and conflated freedom with convenience. And tragically, it's showing. And it's really sad. Convenience is not freedom. And what people, the anti-maskers, what they're really fighting for is their own convenience. Because they do not want to be inconvenienced by this risk mitigation measure. Well, I'll leave you to contemplate that, friends. Like I was saying, don't take me on blind faith. Think about what I share and discuss. Ask the questions that come to mind. And if you want me to consider your questions, come to the Facebook page. Just type in the Almost Daily Zencast, and you should find it. I do have the word almost in brackets, I believe. But it should come up even if you don't include the brackets, although I might be wrong. Or you can go to sprecher.com/Zencast, or just go to sprecher.com and search in the little search tool for Zencast, and you should get one word, Zencast. You should get the show, and then you can listen to the shows right there and plop your questions down right there on each episode. And if you've got ideas for future episodes or subject matter you'd like me to discuss, by all means, submit it there. As always, friends, thank you for tuning in and listening to me ramble incoherently for 45 minutes. It all kind of adds up. I know that my style of discussion is seems arbitrary at first. But if you've got the patience and the endurance to listen to a third of all my episodes, you'll start to get where I'm going with the way I build stuff. It's unscripted, it's authentic, it's really me trying to just be an opinion talk show host, sharing with you my thoughts about the day and what's going on. So, as I was saying, thank you for tuning in, and stay tuned for more. Until next time, I've been your humble host, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo.